Hi everyone, this is Katie from Katie Loves Classic Books, and I'm here today with my September wrap-up. So it's nighttime, and I never know if videos are going to turn out that great when I film them at night, but hopefully this turns out okay. It's October, Halloween time, so my apartment has lots of Halloweeny things in it, so I'm filming in this corner with all this fun stuff. Anyways, yeah, let's talk about the books I read in September. So, the first book that I read in September was Winema, A Child of the Forest by S. Alice Callahan. And this was first published in 1891. And I gave this 3 out of 5 stars on Goodreads. So, this is considered to be the first novel written by a woman of Native American descent, so that's kind of cool. So not necessarily the first writer, but the first novel. And I enjoyed this and found it historically interesting. It just wasn't the best piece of literature ever. Like, it just wasn't that well written or put together, and maybe not that memorable, but yeah, I do feel it was important in a way, and I'm still glad I read it, and it had some important points in it. So, it follows a girl named Winema, who is a Muskogee Indian and or Native American, and she grows up on Indian territory in Oklahoma, so I think it's like post Trail of Tears, like reservation living. And then on the other hand, there's a woman named Genevieve Weir, and she's a Methodist teacher, and she comes to teach at the reservation Winema's at, and she's just very sympathetic to Native American problems. And she befriends Winema, and they become lifelong friends. And so we explore this world through the two of them. It explores some facets of the Muskogee culture. Not a tremendous amount. I feel like what is explored is a little bit random, but still fascinating. And it also explores women's rights a bit and women's equality. And yeah, so it's a book that's very sympathetic to Native Americans and also women and those two issues at the time. And Genevieve Weir, as she comes in contact with the culture, becomes more understanding and more I guess just understanding towards the culture, because maybe at first she's a bit ignorant, although she's a very compassionate person. And you see the like assimilation happening, sadly. But the characters in this book are trying to do the best they can with that. It does touch on some big events at the time, like the Wounded Knee Massacre, which happens with the Sioux tribe in North Dakota, I believe, or one of the Dakotas. And that was a huge outrage at the time and a terrible, terrible incident. And even though the people in this book are not with the Sioux tribe, they still discuss these issues, and some of those events are interwoven within the narrative. So you get a little bit of culture, you see a little bit of what was happening at the time, just furthered my knowledge of Native American history. And, I feel like the things I was taught in school, I feel like I wasn't taught enough about Native American history, to be honest, but I feel like you really aren't shown the truly bad things very unfair things the U.S. did to Native Americans. And so in reading things like this, and by people of Native descent, and that are a bit older, so some of the events, were very fresh, at the time, you just learn more of what happened and more of the truth, I suppose. Yeah, and there's also a fair bit of romance in this. Like, I've heard this called a domestic romance in a way, like what both Winema and Genevieve have their own little romances. But I thought what was explored using that was interesting because they're really talking about very equal partnerships between men and women, and these women finding men who are compassionate, sensitive men who allow them to also be powerful, but who are understanding to both women's rights and who are understanding to the Native condition. And so it was like kind of like an important role model for relationships, that I still think is important. Like, I still think people want very equal partnerships that are just fair and and of course you want somebody who is a compassionate person and not ignorant, Genevieve, the Methodist teacher. Her first love, she ends up with someone else who's more compassionate, but her first love is a very ignorant guy who wants his wife to be a very certain way and doesn't want her to have ideas and does not think very highly of the Native Americans. And so, you see these little tug of wars and the figuring out of the right people to be with. So anyway, so it was just not a very highly polished novel or a wonderful work of literature, but there were interesting nuggets of information here. Like I said, I got a wee bit of the Muskogee culture. I got to see what it was like during the assimilation process for both the Native peoples and kind of the white point of view, those of more compassionate white people. And some of the bigger historical events of the time that were quite terrible, and also just a little bit of exploration of women's rights and what it's like to have the best kind of equal partnership. Yeah, so that's all interesting information. It just was put into a book that was not very well polished. So, yeah. So I don't know if I highly recommend this. I say it's not highly polished, it's not a fabulous work of literature, so that if you are interested, you're reading it for different reasons, perhaps. But I did like it, and if you know that, I do recommend it if you are somebody that is looking for more Native American literature. Because historically it's interesting, and there are interesting little nuggets in here. So if you know what you're getting into, and you want to read this for the right reasons, and then you may get something out of it, because I did get something out of it, and I'm glad I read it. I just don't think it was the best thing ever. It may not stick with me as much as some other things, but still, I guess talking about it, some of the events and things explored in here have kind of stuck with me a bit. So yeah, an interesting book for sure. So, the second book I read in September was Jitterbug Perfume by Tom Robbins, and this was published in 1984, and I gave this 5 out of 5 stars on Goodreads. So I adored this book to pieces. This was so amazing. Probably one of the best books I've read in a long time, and yeah, it had a big impact on me and was such a joy to read. So this is a very bizarre book to describe. Like, on one hand, there's kind of a magical realism aspect. It's definitely like a postmodernist book. It's an epic of sorts. It's absurd. It's hilarious. Yeah, so it's definitely wacky. We follow a few different storylines. We mainly follow this man named Alabar's perspective, and his perspective starts in ancient Bohemia, and he kind of dances across time, we shall say, and then we also get the perspectives of 3 modern day, which was the 80s, perfumers, and then all their storylines merge. Yeah, so this is mostly about immortality, spirituality, death, and that is all, and the exploration of all of that is tied into perfume as well. So it's crazy, and I don't know how to explain it necessarily. It was a wonderful exploration of immortality and death, like a much different perspective than anything I've ever read. Yeah, just really different, really interesting. And its exploration of spirituality and different beliefs across time was interesting, especially with Alabar. We get to go through time and explore all these different beliefs, pagan beliefs, though when Christianity came into being, and like the Greeks and the Greek gods and goddesses and those kind of beliefs, and Buddhism and Hinduism and all these different things. I get to see the good part of it, like what everyone's searching for, and the bad parts of all of them as well. So on one hand, it was a fabulous exploration of belief and spirituality, and then also of immortality and kind of our mindsets about death, like how everyone is always so focused on death, and a lot of the beliefs, especially, you know, in later years, had such a big afterlife and death focus. And this book made me think about life, and it kind of was an ode to life in a way, and to focus on life and not death. Don't be so eager to die, and what happens when people focus more on life than on death. And yeah, so not being afraid of death. It wasn't like about death being a bad thing or being afraid of it, but it's about stop focusing on it, just forget about it, focus on life. And I loved that, and it was wonderful. And then they tied perfume into all this, and I don't even know how to explain how perfume tied into, I don't know. They're saying the direction you need to go in is kind of, there's this whole thing about the part of our brain that processes scent, and perfume tying into flowers, and how, and us kind of getting back to earth more, and yet being like flowers, which are sexy and soft and gentle and wonderful, and yeah, I don't know how to explain it. But perfume was done and told us stuff about immortality and life and belief and all of that, and it was interesting and a wacky ride, and it was so wonderful. And the characters were great too. They really stuck with me. Alabar and his soulmate, oh no, I can't think of her name. I think it's Kudra. It doesn't say on the back. I think it's Kudra. They were wonderful. I just cared lots about them. The genius waitress Priscilla, who made a perfume at night, she was a character I really sympathized with and liked. There was a French character called Marcel, or also known as Bunny, and he was really funny, and all the sections with him were just hilarious. And yeah, so wonderful stuff. The god Pan was in this, and for quite a while. I don't want to give anything away about why, but he kind of follows Alabar, and I don't know, kind of is a big part of the story, and that was really interesting. So yeah, this was just, it was weird and wacky and wonderful, but it was profound, and it had me thinking, and it had me thinking about all our different belief systems. It had me think about why we focus so much on death, and it had me wanting to embrace life, and it was a joy to read. Like, I had such a big smile on my face while reading this most of the time when I wasn't thinking deeply. So, yeah, I can't recommend this highly enough. If any of that sounds like something you like, please pick it up. Just so wonderful. And this was really random that I picked this up, and I'm so grateful for the person who suggested it, but a long time ago, like talking 3 to 4 years ago, somebody on Tumblr suggested that I read this, and I didn't really know what to make of it, but I was kind of interested, so I was like, okay, I'll put it on my to-read list, and I just got to it, and I'm so glad I did, because I don't know, this could end up being a favorite book of mine. At least it probably is. I think it is. Like, it stands out so much. It's just really, really wonderful, and I can't wait to check out more Tom Robbins if the rest of his work is anything like this. So there you go. So the third book I read this month was The Garden Party and Other Stories by Katherine Mansfield, and she was an author from New Zealand, and this collection was published in 1922. And I gave this 4 out of 5 stars on Goodreads. So this is a short story collection, if you can't tell. And these stories are so wonderful. I don't think there was a bad one in the whole collection. I mean, obviously some just stuck with me more than others, which I just find with short stories, but they're all really wonderful. And they were more like word paintings than stories. You'd be dropped into a particular moment. Everything was so vivid, and the emotion of the moment so evocative, and it was amazing, and just truly like each of these were mini works of art, if you know what I mean. Really lovely. So my 2 favorites in the collection were actually the first 2 that were even in the collection, called At the Bay, and then the title story, The Garden Party. So At the Bay is the longest story, and I wonder if that's why I liked it more, but it was set in the span of a single day from morning till night in New Zealand, and was kind of a family story. Followed this one family that apparently is loosely based on Katherine Mansfield's own family, and you just see all the characters and all their thoughts and feelings and all their longings, I guess. I would say all the characters in the story have longings, or kind of dissatisfied in a way. But the story was just so beautifully descriptive, and just this one day just came to life so vividly, and this place came to life so vividly. And the feeling, the little glimpses of feelings you get into all these characters were just so vivid. I thought it was really fantastic. And then The Garden Party, the title story, is also set in New Zealand, and also kind of a family story about this family, and they're about to throw a garden party. And it mostly follows this one girl named Laura. And she's very excited for the party. She's just so alive to life at the time it happens. And then these lilies arrive, and which I think is interesting, because I think lilies kind of are associated with death in a way. And she becomes quite fixated with them, and then everyone finds out that a man has died on the road leading to their house, and she becomes quite fixated with that. So I feel like the lilies kind of tie into that, which I just thought was an interesting imagery or symbolism or something. And yeah, so in the midst of life comes death, and the main character, Laura, just has this big awakening because of it. Yeah, and that story was just so vivid, and her feelings again were very vivid, and I just thought those 2 first stories were just so wonderful. What other good ones did I like? I think Miss Brill was really short but powerful. I think that one's set in France or something. Not all the stories are set in New Zealand. There's a fair amount. I think those tended to be, that was my favorite setting, but there are a few set in England, because Katherine Mansfield lived there for a long time, and also France, because I think she lived there a bit as well. And so Miss Brill is about this old lady, and she goes to the park every weekend, and she believes she's acting in a play and spectating it as well. And she has this weird, funny idea about everything, and she's very observant. But then kind of an incident happens that shakes her sense of self and her perception of things, and it was sad and weird, and yeah, just very vivid and strange and interesting. And Another one, The Daughters of the Late Colonel, I thought was really good as well, about these older sisters whose father has just died and them kind of figuring out what to do with themselves because they've been under the iron rule of their father for so long they almost don't know what to do with their own lives, and that story was very powerful. Again, just the imagery of these stories and just the feelings in such a short span of time. And like I said, there's no like beginning or end to these stories. You really are like plopped into the middle of a scene and this random day and the feelings of these characters, and it's just so profound, really. Beautifully described. There was a story, it wasn't one of my favorites, but I had a moment. I think that was one of my favorites, so that's why I want to talk about it. So it's called The Life of Ma Parker. It was kind of a brutal story because it's about this old lady and she has had a rough life, let me tell you. And so her story's kind of sad, maybe not the most pleasantry, but at the end, it's like she's been through so much she needs to cry, but she just can't seem to do it, and then it starts raining, and it's like the world cries for her. I don't know, so it's just one of those like imagery, symbolism things that I really liked that I saw dotted throughout these stories. Yeah, so Katherine Mansfield was quite an artist of words, and yeah, and I thought all of these are really quite good. And she had a tragically short life, so who knows what she would have written if she didn't die, but death was kind of a theme throughout these stories. You could see that juxtaposed with youth and life, because Katherine Mansfield was young, but she was dying, and you can see those kinds of themes coinciding a lot in these stories. Yeah, another person who died tragically young was as Alice Callahan. She died at 23. I think Katherine Mansfield was in 20, so yeah, some tragic deaths here. Because it's sad, because they probably would have written more and developed their style more. Anyway, so but you see that hanging over her through these stories. If you're a fan of Virginia Woolf, these would probably suit your reading taste because she feels quite similar in style, and I'm pretty sure they knew each other. I think they're friends, also maybe a bit jealous of each other, I'm not sure. Yeah, so she's definitely in that modernist cast of writers at that time period. Yeah, so I recommend this if this sounds like something you would like. So, the fourth and final book I read in September was Assassin's Quest by Robin Hobb, and this was published in, gosh, I want to say, I think it was 1997. And I gave this 5 out of 5 stars on Goodreads. So this is the third and final book in a trilogy called the Farseer Trilogy. There are other books set in the same world, like other series set in the same world, I guess make up a greater series. So I will be continuing with that, but I have completed now the first trilogy. And the trilogy, loosely to explain a bit, follows a guy named Fitz. He is a bastard of a prince in a kingdom called the Six Duchies, and yeah, and it goes from there. And there are red ships plaguing the shores of his kingdom with these terrible raiders doing terrible things. So the kingdom is at stake, and everyone's trying to find a solution. And also within the royal family, there's a lot of intrigue and not so great stuff going on that Fitz helps try to figure out as the series goes on, trying not to spoil anything. Yeah, and there's magic. There's an interesting magic system that I really feel like grows throughout the books. Fitz has certain magical skills that are super cool that I really like, and the characters are just fantastic. So in this one, this was a long one. This was like 800 and something pages, and the first half was slow, which I'm sorry to say. I still enjoyed it, but it seemed to drag. There was a lot of journeying and a lot of, like, we had Fitz, and I love him. He's the first person perspective of the whole series. But a lot of my favorite characters are in it, and there's a lot of journeying, and I feel like the plot wasn't progressing that much the first half. So, like, I still enjoyed it, but it dragged more. It was the first time I felt any sort of dragging in these books, because the last two, the whole way through, I was enjoying. But thank goodness the second half picked up a lot, and I thought it was fantastic. Again, a lot of my favorite characters came back, the plot was interesting, and I was completely hooked. So at the end, I liked it so much that I still had to give it 5 out of 5 stars. But the beginning, if it had continued like that, I wouldn't have. So this one has a slow beginning and some stuff that I feel like felt like filler a little bit. I don't know. Yeah. So in the other two books, a lot of the story takes place at Buckkeep, which is where the royal family lives, and I liked that setting. But this one had more journeying and whatnot. It was cool because we got to see more of the kingdom and more what's going on elsewhere, what the other places are like. So that was kind of cool, building on the world, I guess, a bit. I just found the first half dragged, but then they get to this place called the Mountain Kingdom in the second half, and there's journeying beyond that and whatnot. And I really liked all of that and everything we discovered, and yeah, good stuff. And I thought the ending was good. I thought it actually wrapped up the trilogy really nicely, because I didn't know if it would be left rather open-ended, but it wrapped the trilogy nicely. But I can see how there's still more stories to be had later on. Yeah, and I enjoyed the characters just as much once most of them were back in it, as usual, because I think the series has some of the best characters ever. Like, I love them. Fitz is a wonderful first-person perspective. His wolf Night Eyes was in this one again. I adore. Verity, Katherine, the Fool. I think the Fool is becoming my favorite character. I think he just is my favorite character. Yeah, and I'm liking him and Fitz and how their relationship to each other is growing and all of that. So I can't wait to read more about the Fool and Fitz and everyone, pretty much. Yeah. And there were a couple new characters that I liked. Some of the characters in the beginning were filler, but then there are a couple that seem like they were more important. So we'll see. Anyways, yeah, but I adored this series. I just think, besides it having wonderful characters, it's great writing, a fantastic world building. The magic system that started out subtle seems to be growing and gaining strength, and it seems to have a lot of profound meaning about, I don't know, our connection to each other and the animals, and commentary too about, I don't know, about countries and rulership and how things should be done. I don't know. There can just be a lot of that kind of exploration fantasy, and I just think it's wonderful. I'm so addicted, and I have, for the past 3 months, I read one of these a month, and I'll continue with the other series doing the same thing. So you shall see much more Robb and Hobb from me, because I am quite a fan. Anyways, so those are all my books I read in September. I did read half of one at the end of the month, but then I didn't finish it till today, and it's October 2nd. So I will just put that in my October wrap up. For October, I have picked out some Halloween reads, or some books, you know, that I thought would be good for Halloween time, October time. So that's fun. I don't know if my entire wrap up, like already the first book in October, won't be scary, but my whole wrap up may not be Halloween themed, but there shall be inclusion of Halloween books, which is fun. So join in with me if you want. Read some Halloween stuff and share with me somewhere, like on Tumblr or in the comments here, something like that. Anyway, so I hope you like this video, and yeah, if you read any of these books or have something to say to me, recommend something to me, please feel free to comment below. I'll link my Goodreads and Tumblr so that if you want to follow written reviews. you can do that. I'll also link my Patreon account that I have. I don't think I have any patrons at the moment, but if you feel like supporting me, it's always wonderful and welcome. And people have supported me in the past. I feel like I haven't thanked anyone in the video. So for those that have in the past, that was much appreciated. So thank you. You're very kind. Yeah, so I'll see you next month, and I hope you have a wonderful October filled with all sorts of wonderful fallish, Halloween types of things. Anyways, bye everyone.